Hello and welcome to another episode of That 60s Recording Podcast, the podcast that has conversations inspired by the golden era of recording. I hope you've all had a wonderful week. Here we are back for number second. Oh my goodness, the amount of these introductions I restart, I'm determined not to restart this one. This is the second part of my conversation with Fran Ashcroft about his new book that's come out. I hope you've gone to check it out. And if you haven't, I do urge you to go and do it. We'll talk more about it in the conversation. I've had a really nice week here, actually, because I started doing these funny voiceover things. Not funny, they're just voiceover things over sessions that I've recorded, or the isolated drums, which I'm sure you'll have noticed are the transitions. So as soon as I lead into the podcast, you'll hear it's Obladi Oblada this week, which I've sent out on my mailing list. So if you don't subscribe to my mailing list, you can do that through my website. But yeah, on my Instagram at All You Need Is Drums or at Joe Montague Drums, I've been doing these voiceover things that have gone down really, really well. And I mean, I'm a begrudging user of social media. You have to do it. That's just part of the job, isn't it? But to finally get a little win like that makes you feel quite good, like you're getting one over on them, but actually you're not. You're just playing their game, and that's fine. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, go and check that out. And I won't chew your ear off anymore. We'll just get straight into the second part of my conversation with Fran Ashcroft. Are you ready for my attempt at an advert? Here it comes. Make Noise Pro Audio are specialists in used pro audio equipment, and since 2015 they've been on an endless quest to supply all things modern, old, vintage and obscure. Everything from outboard, microphones, synthesizers, audio interfaces, drum machines, mixing consoles, studio monitors, amplifiers, cabling, furniture, and everything in between. Go and check them out at makenoiseproaudio.co.uk. Sam's a lovely chap. Definitely go and do it. Enjoy the episode! Your first sort of break in the industry was as a writer. You had a publishing deal.
Yeah.
Did you get that from moving to London, or did you have that first?
No, I used to go down to London regularly because I'd make me tapes at home, on the string 3/4 chips, mono tape recorder, and go and sort of hawk them around. And I used to get a lot of interest, but it wasn't quite there. Of course, it wasn't quite there. I was just a kid. So, just been knocking on doors all day. And I think I was going back to the station to go home. And I noticed a sign outside this building, and it said something for the publishers that I'd never heard of. I thought, I'll just go in then. And in those days, if you had a tape, they would usually see you because not many people had tapes.
Mm.
The way they were doing it then was they were going to see, bands and whatnot performing live.
Yes, yeah.
But very few people had tapes, so you could get through the door relatively easily. So I just walked into these publishers and they said, "Oh yeah, come on in." And they played the tape, and listened to all the songs on it, and said, "Well, can I keep a couple of these?" The guy said. I said, "Well, yeah, all right." And that kind of turned into a publishing deal, which I still lived up north when I was doing most of that. And they'd send me a check every week and I'd write songs. Didn't have any limit on how few or how many I had to write. It was all up to me. They were great.
Oh, excellent.
And that just allowed me to develop until such time it felt like, well, I really need a band now. Moved to London and then started doing that bit.
And what do you remember of your first experiences recording sort of around that time?
Well, let's see. Strawberry Studios, I think everybody was, had a hard time with, because I had a drummer and two cello players with me on that one. And they had a hard time with headphones or being stuck in an isolation booth. Because it was very, early 70s kind of studio. I'd never heard such good, sound quality coming out of anything before. I was astounded at the quality of the sound because I'd never been in a studio before, and it was a decent studio. Just a demo session and all that. The other one that really sticks out in my mind was the first time I went to Abbey Road. That was something that I'd knocked out in a little 8-track. I'd rung up the publisher and said, well, a studio in London, we can have a day for 25 quid. So they paid for that. And I went down and did a couple of songs in a day, and on 8-track it was. And they said, oh, why don't we go to Abbey Road and we'll mix it? So I went down there, and we were fixing up guitar overdub and whatnot. We're in Studio 3. And I said, well, I've got my guitar, but I haven't got an amp. So the kind of gopher guy, this old bloke in one of those warehouseman's overcoat things, wheels it in on a British Rail trolley, this beautiful Selma amp. The sound was fantastic, and what struck me was how good the engineers were. I mean, talk about sort of timing things. The 8-track recording that I'd made, the timing was a bit iffy, and it was like, oh well, we'll just take this chorus and edit it. It was like out with a razor blade. They edited the multi-track in about 5 minutes, as I recall.
Wow.
3-hour sessions, so I did the guitar overdubs, they edited that, and then we mixed it, and we were finished ahead of time,
Fantastic.
Brilliant standard of engineering, in those days anyway.
I mean, that must have been, I mean, I don't, you may not have been, but presumably you were a Beatles fan at the, in the early 70s. So
that's what started me off.
Yeah. So, I mean, Abbey Road must have been a really, like, a dream come true moment, sort of thinking, I can't believe I've got here.
Yeah. It was a combination of sort of not being intimidated by the place, but just the sheer size of it, for one thing, or whatnot. And in some ways, the expectation that I would end up there.
Yeah.
Which is an odd thing to say.
Well, you've got to have that confidence in yourself, don't you? And you were taking big risks going down from Preston to London, and you were actively trying to make an impact in sort of the industry.
Oh yeah, I was determined. I wasn't going to stop. So that was a nice moment. Definitely.
What was your transition from? Was that all of these sort of moments recording at Abbey Road and going to Strawberry, presumably were sort of feeding, maybe you weren't aware of it at the time, but feeding an appetite to move to production? You must have had an interest in the production side of it, even though you were there as a songwriter.
For me, it was always about records.
Okay.
I wanted to make records. So move to production, there's 2 reasons for it, really. After the band sort of folded and that sort of fell apart, I was fed up with the restrictions of being in a band signed to a major label, because you can only do one thing. You can do the thing that the band does, and I wanted to do all sorts of different kinds of records, and I realised I wouldn't be able to do that by having a band. And obviously over time we've been in studios and whatnot, and I had an interest in production. I had no idea really where to start, and I think one day I had a meeting with Richard Ogden, who ended up managing McCartney, who was a great bloke, very good manager, very astute guy. And I played him, what I was currently doing, He said, well, have you thought about, producing or anything like that? And I hadn't really taken it seriously. And I thought, yeah, I might as well give that a go. so, so I gradually got into it, and I knew enough about recording because I'd logged a few hours by then. I knew enough to get off the starting blocks. I wouldn't say I knew very much, but obviously I knew how to deal with musicians and I knew what went on in studios. So it kind of gave me a little bit of a foothold to kind of make that move over to production. But,
Went on to record at some studios worldwide. I mean, you must have seen some. You just talked earlier about the difference between US and UK, but you've worked in Japan, Belgium, South Africa, Denmark, and loads of different places. There must be a huge contrast between a lot of the way that these different countries operate.
It's really interesting. I mean, America for sure, as I mentioned before, very different. And I don't think I ever really adjusted to the way they kind of did things there, or what their motivation seemed to be, because it certainly wasn't mine. And different countries approach things in different ways, and they have different levels of skill.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're working in Scandinavia, the engineers really know what they're doing. They really know what they're doing there from a technical point of view. So you're going to get a good sound.
Yeah.
Things like that. If you're working in London, that's a different vibe, and it tends to be there's a lot more banter working in London, and it is that we're going to having a good time aspect of it.
Yeah.
More so than anywhere else. Everywhere else is a bit more business-like as a rule.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And like the sort of Japan deal, that's kind of bizarre. They're lovely people. They're lovely people. A group from came over to the US when I was there because they had some shows and whatnot, and it was like kids on a school trip. They were just delighted with everything.
Amazing.
But communication is extremely difficult.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I had some of the stuff I've been working on, and JVC in Japan were interested in it. I think the problem for them was, I didn't live in Japan, and I didn't know enough to understand their market fully, or how they approach making records, as opposed to what you might do in the US or UK.
Yeah.
So in their eyes, it was like, well, they kind of like the concepts, but not the finished recordings.
Interesting. Okay.
Basically, which was a shame, but it was a good experience, just seeing the contrast of these different ways of working.
Yeah.
And that's really useful. Also, there's opportunities for me to get out of the US every year and do a little tour of Europe recording.
Well, yeah.
Which I enjoyed. Yeah.
What are some of your fondest sort of memories as a producer, or particularly interesting experiences that you've found in different studios?
Well, from a studio point of view, working at Trident was great. I thought that was a fantastic studio. What a brilliant room! It was, for a band to play in. It's just a brilliant room. You sound better. Everybody feels like it sounds better just because you're in that room.
Yeah.
It's a really strange thing. I thought it was a wonderful place, and I was very sorry when it closed.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I've forgotten the question now.
I'm just interested in your some particular sort of highlights of your working in all the different studios.
Oh, that's right.
Not many people have had the amount of experience you have had, so I'd love to just know what bits stand out more than others.
Yeah, well, there's a few standout good experiences and a few standout bad experiences. I'll give you an example of both.
Mm.
I was working with a French band a few years ago. Well, yeah, it's only 2 years ago, and they decided to come over here to record in the studio. I was using the Analogue one, and lovely people. It was like eight French guys. And the first thing they did, so we got to the studio and said, "Oh well, we'll have to sort lunch out." So they spotted the Iceland or whatever it was. I think it was Iceland. I said, "Oh, we'll have to go in here first." So they went in Iceland and they filled the bloody trolley with with like booze and curry and whatnot. Went back to the studio, and while while I was setting up mics and things like that and getting the gear sorted out, they were cooking. You know, it was great. We had a lovely time, and I think we did an album in 3 days, I think.
Oh wow, fantastic!
They were brilliant, yeah, including the mixing.
Wow.
Fantastic, great people and great band. That.
Oh, yeah, that's really like the old days. That
it was utterly enjoyed. The whole experience was just a blast. It was great. Yeah. And then they were scheduled to go back, and I thought they'd already gone, and the phone went, and I picked it up in its den and said, "Oh, we're in the pub across the road. Come on in, we're going to have some lunch." So we do that, and then the van gets stuck in the car park, and they had to push it out because it broke down or something. And there was like 8 of them pushing this van down the road on the way home to Paris or whatnot. It was great. It was really good. And there's all these, the guys in the pub. There's about 6 people in the pub. There's all these old guys, sitting there. And that suddenly they've got like 8 Frenchmen in there, like more people than are in the pub. And there's all this kind of like thing going on outside with a van bumping into the wall of the pub and all sorts. It was a lovely experience, definitely. As was working with the telescopes.
Oh yeah,
they were fantastic. Yeah. Brilliant session that was. Similar thing, and we were done. We had a couple of days booked, 3 days or something. We were done more or less a day ahead of time.
Oh, fantastic!
They were so efficient when they recorded. It's like, everything was first take and it was right.
Oh, brilliant!
You hardly ever come across that. Fantastic band, really, really good. Going to the darker side of the coin. Let's say I've probably been banned from the studio 3 times. Various things. The one in the US probably sticks in mind the most.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned before, there were a lot of people in America who had studios but didn't have a clue what they were doing.
Yeah.
And this was one of those studios. And the owners evidently thought that because we built the studio out and we had our own engineer and everything, that because they were the owners of the studio, they got to sit at the tape machine and operate it and do all this business.
Right.
And I said, well, sorry, that's not going to happen. And I think they plugged in the speakers and one of them wasn't working. And then, they sorted it out. Press play, and that is so out of phase, it was unreal. I thought, oh, great, this is going to be brilliant. So I said, you really need to leave. We've got our own engineer here. We can take care of it. And they were really pissed off.
Mm.
It really pissed them off. So I was told never to darken their doors again. Which I didn't mind because I wouldn't have done anyway.
No.
I think there was a similar experience in Sweden, sadly. So those things happen. You get very good things and very bad things. Most of the time, it's probably more like hard work. And you have to be very focused, and it can be a bit of a slog sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
That's how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is sort of bringing us whole circle. That's a large part of the experience that you show in the book is that the the sort of hard graft that there is, and the amount of thinking that goes on. It's when you're working with a producer or an engineer, if you're lucky enough to have an engineer and a producer, the way that the wheels are slicked it can look effortless, but actually it takes a huge amount of experience, and the way that you are able to articulate that in the book is really, I think, really needed at the moment. I think there's a lot of information in there that isn't anywhere else. A lot of other places are dealing with sort of the headlines of what you're talking about, whereas you really dig in and make sure that a lot of those nuances, like you're just talking about, the slog and the making sure that the band's looked after and keeping everybody happy, and all of those little bits of WD-40 that help the sessions go smoothly. They're not written about anywhere else. I think it's fantastic that this book exists.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a tendency for people to think, it's a kind of this process where you go in the studio and you just sort of whack out a load of takes and that's it or whatever, and everybody's happy. But it's not. It's a lot of it's detailed work, and it requires a lot of concentration on the part of the artist and the engineer and the producers as well. It's not a. There are too many things that can end up not being right unless you're focused.
Yes.
And unless you have, a very clear idea of what you're aiming to achieve, and not going in thinking, oh, well, they'll sort it out in the studio later or whatever. Or we'll fix it in the mix kind of idea, or we'll fix it when we master it,
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff. So yeah, the thinking about what you're doing is the thing, and listening is important. I missed out in the book, and I should have put this in somewhere, about producing a record. The thing that happens when you mix is that quite often you got the band sitting behind you, and after about 10 minutes when you start mixing, they start chatting, and as things progress, the chatting gets louder and louder and louder and louder. You turn it up and they get louder, and you end up just having to turn around and tell them to shut up. Honestly, because they're not aware of, they're not listening anymore, they're not paying attention anymore.
No.
So if they're not paying attention, they shouldn't really be there.
No, I think that's that's an experience thing, that there's a lot of technicalities in particularly the first stages of a mix, when you're sort of preparing to actually do the balance or whatever, that makes it's quite boring to be part of. And I think
unless you're doing something, recording is absolutely boring as hell.
Yeah. And I think
unless you're actively doing something,
that's it. And artists feel as though they want to be part of every part of the process, but if I were an artist working with a mix engineer, I'd want to just hear where they got to, not necessarily the process of how they got to it. And I think that's it's hard for artists to relinquish control to that extent, but it's important for an engineer or producer to put their foot down occasionally and have that bit of breathing space where they're not having the artist peering over every 2 seconds.
Yeah, I got to a point where it's like, well, I don't want anybody there when I mix.
I think that's sensible, yeah.
I always sort of relent on that, because my thoughts exactly when I was in a band and that is that, I'm the artist. I'm going to be there when you mix, whether you like it or not. And if you don't let us, we're not going to have you producers.
Yeah.
Simply as that. So, I will allow that, because I think it's the artist's right to be there if they want to be.
Yes, yeah.
But notwithstanding that, if they're not paying attention or whatnot, I'll tell them.
Well, yeah, completely. So what's next for you? What you've done an album and a book. It feels like you deserve a bit of a rest. But have you got anything else that you kind of got your eyes set on?
Yeah. Currently, I'm exploring this kind of AI technology.
Oh yeah.
So the way that they did, remix Revolver for whatever reason, because they could.
Yeah.
Where you can sort of original track and split it into like 50 pieces or something.
Yeah.
It's got some interesting aspects to it. If you have something that's from probably quite a long time ago that wasn't on a multi-track or isn't on a multi-track anymore, and you might feel that it would have a place if it were either remixed or redone or rethought. And it's fascinating that, you know, the AI technology can do that, you know, sometimes for better or worse. But just the idea that that's possible to do, I think opens up a range of possibilities, which you wouldn't have been able to do before. For example, I've got a very old track knocking about that I really, really like the piano sound and the drum sound on it, but that's all I like.
Okay.
And I could see being able to use that in a different context.
Interesting. Yeah.
If I could get that just that separated out, you know. So I'm looking into things like that, and seeing whether you know, you can actually make a viable record that's not like a re-release of something else, but, you know, is valid in a 21st century place.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and as a 21st century record, not a remix or a remaster or anything like that, but something new. And would it work?
I love that idea. I mean, I'm excited to hear where you go with that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. So it got me thinking, that one. I didn't realize until recently, because I mean, I'd heard about this, you know, before, and, you know, I knew what could be done. What I didn't realize was how quickly widespread it's become and how easy it is to access.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's like loads of stuff out there. Oh, there's this program, that program, blah, 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 blah. Do it here online for free, God knows what. You know, how sort of just everywhere that it is. So, I mean, God knows what people are going to do other than sort of remix themselves to death for the most part. But,
I think it's like anything.
You know,
It'll take a little
choice.
while to settle down, won't it? You know, there'll be a flurry of things happening first that might not be quite so cool. But then, I mean, a great example of it is the Get Back film, where they use it to separate out the audio, and I think that's a really sensible use of it.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was great. Whereas I think using it to, you know, sort of rebuild Revolver into something that's not as good like it as it was before is stupid.
Yeah.
But that's all about making money, you know.
Completely, yeah.
So it'll be you see record labels thinking, oh great, we can re-release everything again with AI technology. You know, it's just going to be another sort of, you know, inferior version of what they started off with.
Yeah, yeah, the cash cow, isn't it? Where can people find out about the record that you've got out, the tour of British Duck Ponds?
The record is in Think Like a Key on Think Like a Key label, TLAK. But it's available everywhere, I suppose, that way. And the book is, well, just Google it. Everybody, I think, has got it. All the main retailers have it, as far as I know.
Yeah, I'll put links to it in the show notes too. I think if people just search, so it's called The Analogue Approach to Digital Recording and Mixing, and
yeah, which is a bit of a mouthful, but you know, it does get the point across.
It absolutely. I mean, I don't know what else it could be called. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, because we couldn't think of a shorter way of saying it.
I have to say, I think I messaged you on when we were discussing getting this together. As soon as I saw the book was coming out, and I was sent a PDF copy before I got the physical one, and just from the beginning, it was as if you'd written down everything that I wanted to read. It was just like,
Brilliant.
every sentence that you put, it was like, yes, this is. It's almost like if there was a book of what I want this podcast to be, like an inspiration that this podcast is. That's what this book is. I think it sums up your experiences as a producer and an engineer, and what the way you've articulated in this book. It's everyone should have a copy, in my opinion. I just think it's absolutely brilliant. So, I mean, congratulations.
Oh, I agree. Everyone should have a copy. Tell you what, it saved you a lot of time.
Well, I can tell it's fantastic. So yeah, I mean, thank you for taking the time to write it, and hopefully it will sell lots of copies. I hope that everybody listening to this goes out and gets one, because I think there's so much information in it for people of all experience levels, and I can envisage dipping in and out of it for the near future. That all it's going to be just hanging around the studio from now on. So I'm excited to have it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, and as I say in the book, recording is not that difficult. How you sort of think about what it is you want to record is a different matter, but the actual process itself is simple, and you don't need to get bogged down in it.
No.
And it's all too easy to become bogged down.
Absolutely is, especially now with the amount of information that floats around the I think the way that you sign off is a really important thing. You talk about kind of essentially that, and talk about the records that you've got out, and then one of the final phrases is ultimately don't compare your work to others, because it does no good, and if you're happy with it, then it's good. And I think that's I couldn't think of a better way to have ended this. Ended that book. It's just the fact that it's all subjective, and if you like it, then it's fine. And we're all learning.
That's right. I mean, you have to go by your own standards. Then they change over time.
Absolutely,
But, if you think you've done a good job and you don't have any reservations about that, that's the one. That's the keeper.
Yeah, it's I think it's a really inspiring sort of aspirational way to end the book for people, because as you say, it can be so easy to get bogged down in it and feel inadequate compared to what else is out there, but that's not the important part of it all.
Oh no, I mean it's pointless comparing what you're doing with anybody else's. Everybody's unique, and you can't compare sonically what you might have done in a home studio to what might have been done in Abbey Road that took them 6 months to do. They're different animals. They don't have the same reference points, so it's pointless. And there's nothing wrong with striving to get from A to B to C, improve what you do. That's different, but you have to go by your own standards of whether you're satisfied with what you've done. And inevitably, you won't be satisfied with everything, and that's what you need to encourage you to figure out what to do next. I mean, if I made the perfect record, I wouldn't have to make another one, would
I? Yeah, that was very true. Thank you very much for speaking to us. There's so much good stuff in this for people to take away, and I'll encourage everybody to go and check out the record and the book. And thanks very much.
Oh, well, thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
So there we have it, the second part of my conversation with Fran Ashcroft, and I really do encourage you to go and check out the book. It's called The Analogue Approach to Digital Recording and Mixing. I think you can get it as a digital download as well if you're not into physical books. I don't know why you wouldn't be into physical books. I'm looking online now, and I can see it for £13.72p, which, knowing how good the book is an absolute bargain. So yeah, definitely go and check that out. There's absolutely loads of great information in there. Got some more really cool guests coming up. I was about to tell you who it is, but I'm not going to, because I'm mean. So yeah, we've got some really, really great episodes coming up. I'd like to thank you guys so much for listening and supporting this podcast. You can check out stuff that I do on my website, allyouneedisdrums.com, my Instagram at allyouneedisdrums or at Joe Montague Drums. I'd like to say a big thank you to Adam Mallet for the artwork he designs for the podcast, and to Joe Kane for the intro and outro music. And thank you guys for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will speak to you next week. Goodbye.